Oh, dear. Well, I am Teresa Mitchell. That's Ani Haynes.
Good morning.
This is called This Is Now, Bridge to a Better World. And we wanted to talk about abortion today. And we were talking about it last night, and I was just like, oh my gosh, I don't know where to start with the things that are going on. It seems to me that we are in a typical position previous to an imperial war, in which the topic is simply off the minds of the general public. But we may be at the part where, the CNN operatives, journalists, I'm going to put that in scare quotes, are on the ships that intend to launch the rockets. The reason I say that is because of the number of provocations by Israel versus Hezbollah, and the nature of the provocations is just severe. For example, you may read in the press that Israel assassinated a Hamas leader. Well, they certainly did. They did it in Lebanon, in a city in Lebanon, and they took out the entire apartment block while they did it. It was a grotesque act of aggression. There's no way around it. I mean, if you...
we were talking about this last night, Teresa and I. And we thought, what if a person who a foreign state decides is acting against them, is a terrorist, denotes them a terrorist, and then seeks to get their justice by bombing the apartment building they were staying in, say, DC, or in New York City, or in Portland, because they wanted to get that guy and there's no price too high to pay. What does that look like?
I mean, for most people, the word assassination means some guy sneaking around and there's music in the background. It goes do 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 do, and there's a silencer on the pistol.
Yeah, there's a little poison dart. It comes out of a little pen. Yeah. We've all seen those movies.
Yeah,
they're cool movies.
Assassination, huh? And then there was the, as I've mentioned a couple times, the white phosphorus attack on a border town. And then there were the white phosphorus attacks on Gaza. And then there's the bombing of the funeral anniversary. I don't know, how do you say this? The anniversary of the death. There was a bombing in a cemetery where one of Iran's equivalent of Che Guevara, let's say, was buried, and they took out several people that way. Just provocation after provocation.
As we'll recall, he was assassinated by the Trump team 4 years ago.
Yes, just before Trump left office, which resulted in some very heavy rocket bombing of U.S. troops. So that area is exploding because the U.S. and Israel are exploding it. I was online trying to talk sense to someone who is pro-Gaza bombing, and they won't even go as far as saying, I mean, you can look at the pictures, you can see the bomb craters. It's even in the New York Times, they're using 2,000-pound bombs, and this person was saying, no, it's not a genocide. No, it's not indiscriminate bombing. I said, it's 2,000-pound bombs. The place is a moonscape. What the hell are you talking about? No, what you're saying is nonsense.
Yeah, so, you can't really get surgical precision with a 2,000-pound bomb, eh?
Yeah, I know.
And we all know surgical strikes are bullshit anyway, but still.
Does your surgeon operate with a grenade? This is a ridiculous idea. So that's going on. For that. And then I was puzzled when I saw that the U.S. Gerald Ford was pulled back from the Mediterranean, because they talk about needing all of these assets, and all of a sudden the biggest asset, the Gerald Ford and all of the associated ships, more than 1,000 people in total, are pulling out of the Mediterranean, which means they have to go through the Gibraltar, and they're going back to Norfolk, Virginia. Why? Because they want to fight another war, perhaps, with Taiwan? I'm not sure. But I'm bringing all this up because it's time to really watch the news, and not just what the news says, but what is actually going on. Read alternate news sources, read foreign news sources, and try to get an idea, because the Pentagon doesn't want you to apply any democratic action. If there's one thing the Pentagon and the warmongers and the arms suppliers behind them can't stand, it's democratic action applied to U.S. war policy. So please apply democratic action to U.S. war policy, because it looks like we're about to get into a couple.
As if we haven't already been in a few, right? I mean, our hands are not clean. The U.S. is involved in, in supporting Israel, most notably right now in its genociding of Gaza. Though strong words have been issued by our State Department that they really should be more careful. So, yeah.
And they'll pull it on you like, they sunk our ship. They sunk our ship. What are we supposed to do?
Wait, you sank my battleship.
They sunk our ship.
Yeah. Yeah. So that is terrifying. And that is the world news. The world news is, in fact, full of rather horrifying information as we start off 2024 at war. With so many different factions who are looking like they're vying for imperialist control of the planet, right?
Kind of looks that way.
Kind of looks that way.
Kind of historically is that way.
Yeah. Yeah. Kind of in a hotter period now. And so that's dismaying for sure. Dismaying. Yeah, it's the end of the world.
It's not getting historical about this.
But then we have the news here at home, which I'm going to say is also terrifying. I want to talk about the far right and the ChristoFascists and their deep hatred for women, their deep hatred for people to control their reproductive health. I want to talk about their laws that are compelling people to carry pregnancies, non-viable pregnancies, farther than they should for their own health. I want to talk about I want to talk about compelling people to carry pregnancies to term or to die trying, which is really where they're heading with this. They don't care if people die during pregnancies. That is just the price one pays to be godly, apparently. And look, you'll get pie in the sky for your martyrdom. Even when a pregnancy is not carryable, even as a woman miscarries at home, she is now liable to prosecution. And that is the horrifying case I really want to focus on this morning. And that's the case of Brittany Watts in Ohio. Brittany Watts is a woman who is currently standing before the grand jury in Ohio. She is a woman. That grand jury is deciding whether to indict her for abuse of a corpse because she miscarried at home. I want to unpack this a little bit. Brittany Cox went to an emergency room in St. Joseph of something or other's hospital in Ohio. And she was presenting with signs of a miscarriage, right? That would be heavy bleeding, pain. She knew something was very, very wrong, and she went to the emergency room as we're taught to do. If something's going wrong with our bodies, she had actually, her water had broken, and she was at 21 weeks of pregnancy. So if your water breaks and you're at 21 weeks of pregnancy, it's kind of time for doctors to help, to intervene, and to provide what is called a therapeutic abortion. That's always been known as that's the medical term for miscarriage care. It's to have a pregnancy ended under medical care. And so she presents at the hospital in her 21st week of pregnancy. The doctors found that her water had in fact broke, that her cervix was dilated, and that she had a significantly elevated white blood cell count. This means that she was in the process of miscarrying and she was at risk for serious infection. they had an ethics, a so-called medical ethics panel review the case, and 8 hours after she came seeking treatment, she was returned home because, she was within a few days of the 22-week mark, which in Ohio is the cutoff between abortions being allowed in some circumstances and not. And they were unwilling to say that her life was in jeopardy, even though she was in the process of miscarrying and showing a significantly increased white blood cell count. So they sent her home. The next day, this poor woman comes back to the hospital with continuing symptoms. She's in pain. She's bleeding. And again, she's turned away because the doctors are afraid. The doctors are afraid. And in fact, doctors across the country have complained that they are no longer allowed to do their jobs because they're afraid of being prosecuted under these draconian laws that, in fact, have many gray areas where doctors can be challenged on their decisions and their licenses removed, not to mention facing penalties for, accomplice to murder and stuff. So she waited again 8 hours that first day. She came back a second time and again was refused treatment the second day. Oh yeah, so she went home and she had a miscarriage at home. And this is, really, it's a painful procedure. It's a painful thing to go to emotionally, mentally. It's frightening as hell physically. If you're 21 weeks pregnant, you have a substantive chance of having a lot of bleeding, of catastrophic bleeding. Doctors had, in fact, said that she was at a significant risk for sepsis and catastrophic bleeding without their care. And still, they sent her away. You would think that this story would be horrible enough. She lived through the experience. She returned to the hospital to get care for the miscarriage. What happens at that point? The hospital contacts the police department because she doesn't have a fetus. She miscarried and didn't, I don't know, put the pregnancy remains, the products of conception, as we used to call them at the abortion clinic I worked at. She did not put the fetus like in a pram and push it into the hospital. Like, what in the hell is she supposed to do? So the emergency department, somebody at the hospital called in the police department. And they were notified about the miscarriage because miscarrying is a crime now. They were notified about the miscarriage and told that they needed to go find the fetus. According to the New York Times, and I'm just going to read this straight because it enrages me to points that previously unknown, perhaps. The police found the fetus in the bathroom toilet, the report said. It noted that Ms. Watts had told the police that she disposed of what she believed to be the remains in a bucket in her backyard. The police then took the entire toilet out of the home and took it to the morgue, where it was broken open to retrieve the fetus. The autopsy that the fetus then had reported that the fetus had, in fact, died in utero. It was dead. This was a miscarriage. It died in utero before delivery, and it died because of complications of premature rupturing of the membranes, i.e. her water broke when she was 21 weeks pregnant. The police then charged Brittany Watts with an abuse of corpse. She's currently facing a grand jury to see if she'll be indicted and if she'll have to, in fact, stand trial for being refused care at a hospital twice and having to undergo a miscarriage at home, where no doubt she was in some distress. I think that's terrifying. That is just, it's beyond thought that women are currently being subjected to this. The police, you know, I want to know why the flippin' hospital is not being prosecuted for endangering this woman's life, sending her away twice with an emergency medical condition that is in fact life-threatening. Why are they not being sued for malpractice? No, why is Brittany Watts being you know, put before a grand jury for indictment because she miscarried? What does that say to any woman in this country, any person who is pregnant, who may be miscarrying? What does it say about going to seek medical care as opposed to, say, you know, chancing it and dying alone in your bathroom? What does it say? So I also want to just mention another really well publicized case, and that is the case of Kate Cox in Texas. Kate Cox is a woman in her early 30s, 2 young children. Her and her husband were really looking forward to having a third child to add to the family. But in her pregnancy, right around that time, right around the 20th week, she was finding out that the fetus was being diagnosed with a serious condition, a chromosomal abnormality, and was expected to be delivered either dead, you know, that it would die in utero, or that it would die within hours of being born. And that if she was to carry the pregnancy to term, it would jeopardize future fertility, perhaps. There were medical reasons why carrying the pregnancy to term not only may be harmful to her, would not actually produce a third child for the family, and may impact her ability to have that third child in the future. So her and her husband decided that they would seek to had to terminate the pregnancy. They would seek abortion care. They live in Texas. Too bad for them. No one, in fact, would provide the abortion care, even though doctors knew that the fetus was not viable. Doctors were upset about being hamstrung and not able to provide care. Kate Cox is the first woman who is pregnant to sue a state for abortion services after Roe v. Wade was decided. She was turned down. She ended up fleeing Texas to get the medical care that she needed in order to actually have control of her fertility, her future fertility, and be able to add to her family. This again is a horrifying situation. She is part of a student with many other families in Texas who have faced similar things. So I just wanted to bring that up. We have on genocide, and for good reason. We've been focusing a lot on the catastrophic climate change. We've been focusing a lot on the fascist takeover of this country with the Trumpians, and for good reason. But I really want us to take a moment today. It was seeing footage of Brittany Watts and her devastated demeanor. Her face looks just devastated as she is facing a grand jury indictment for miscarrying alone in what had to be a painful and terrifying procedure for her to undergo alone after being refused medical care at an emergency room 2 days running prior to that miscarriage. This is a travesty. It is unthinkable in my book, and it tells me that we are actually living in New Gilead now. New Gilead, right? There's a bomb in Gilead, right? You know, if you have read read Margaret Atwood's terrifying nightmare vision of a novel, The Handmaid's Tale. The Republic of Gilead was the name of the country after it reformed and the ChristoFascists were in control. And considering the news coming out of the states that have their rights, their access to abortion laws gutted and their doctors' hands tied to provide basic medical care for pregnant people, I think the future is now. This country is quickly going down that path when it comes to seeking approved medical care for pregnant people, for trans people. The ChristoFascists have taken root at the place of science and medical care. And that chills me to my core. That's pretty much what I have for you today. I just wanted to really think, to have us all thinking together about how women right now, how pregnant people right now in this country, not a future scenario, but right now, are in fact being prosecuted legally for having miscarriages.
If you're in New York or if you're in Portland, if you look up, I just did look up access to abortion in Portland. I found this very friendly and helpful website, which not only will direct you to a clinic, but will provide funds to the clinic directly for you and provide you transportation. So if you need an abortion in Portland, it looks like it's pretty easy. Haven't obviously had to do that, so I don't know, but that looks pretty good. But what if you're in Boise and you need an abortion? Well, it's a 6-hour drive to Portland. So I thought, well, it's only a 3-hour drive to Baker City. So let's pull up Baker City and see what abortion services are available there, because it's legal, it's unrestricted in Oregon, and no. The only thing they have in Baker City is a trap of ChristoFascists who will take you
Crisis Pregnancy Center.
Yes, and tell you that well, you really don't need to abandon your baby who's already got a soul, and all the crap that they tell you.
I'm going to point out that I worked at an abortion clinic in Portland. I worked at the Feminist Women's Health Center in the late 80s into 1990. And I can tell you now, I guess into 91, really? Yeah, no, 90. Sorry, as I go down memory lane, I digress. But I can tell you right now that has always been true. That abortion services in the state where they are completely legal have pretty much been restricted to Portland and Eugene. Why? Because even when it was perfectly legal throughout this country and protected under Roe, there was incredible pressures. And I'll point out that while I was working at the abortion clinic in the late 80s for 4 years of my life, we were subjected to Operation Rescues. I don't know how many people remember those, but this was a time when the forced birthers would surround a clinic, trapping people inside, and then threaten to bomb them. It was great. So this sort of thing, clinics have had bombs, clinic workers and doctors have been assassinated throughout the country, throughout the time of Roe being legal. And now we just, and now we're here. I don't know what else to say.
In the early 90s, part of her job was looking for bombs. First thing, we went to the clinic. First thing
that was my first job duty every day. Check for bombs around your building and inside. I know how to open doors to check for bombs. I felt a little like Starsky and Hutch, or maybe it was more like Angie Dickinson in Policewoman every day as I threw open doors and sort of sheltered. And it was intense. It's weird to have to undergo bomb trainings and that sort of thing to work in a medical facility, but here we are.
There's if you pull up the abortion subreddit, there are many scary stories. Here's one from Texas. We had a positive pregnancy test, and we decided we could not support a child at this time. We went with a MA, I think that means methylpristone.
Medical abortion?
But it has been 5 days since the methylprostol, and the bleeding has not stopped.
Yeah, it's a medical abortion.
And pain and nausea the bleeding has stopped, but the pain and nausea have not. And I wanted to seek medical attention because it could be threatening to her health. I do not know where to go or what to do due to Texas laws. And I don't know if she can properly discuss what she took and her symptoms with a doctor in Texas. But she is too scared to, and now thinks this is her punishment, and will try to deal with it because she is too ashamed and guilty of what she has done. I constantly reassure her and tell her she is loved. What are our options out here in Texas so she can get proper treatment. You can imagine what the answers are. That what they're telling her to do on the subreddit, and I don't know whether it's good advice or not, is to go get dilation curettage. Say it was. Don't say anything about having taken the pill, which they won't be able to detect at this point, and just get D&C at the hospital. But she is saying that she would feel bad about lying and feels that they would pressure it out of her. And when I think about that, there's a good chance when you're really
and
feeling
also,
guilty.
I'm going to say that the D&C is in fact what was prescribed for Brittany Watts, and denied because even though she was obviously miscarrying, D&C, dilation curettage, is the medical treatment approved for miscarriage, because you want to make sure that all of the placental, any pregnancy remnants, any uterine lining is removed, because you don't want a chance of infection.
I just want to double down and say this is a horror that is breaking up families. It's going to kill people. I'm sure it is killing people.
Yeah.
Right now, and it makes me wonder what is going on in the heads of these. Have you seen the looks of the legislatures and the judges after they pull off something like this? They have this sort of smug look. I see if I empty it.
Don't do that. That's creepy. Yeah, it's smug, and again, it's Christofascism, right? It is absolute need to control.
They can't get laid, so they're going to control the women. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, maybe. But for whatever reason, they're going to control. And they're going to control access to our own bodies. And again, I'm just going to say, if you haven't already, read Margaret Atwood's The Handmaid's Tale. We are far down that road.
Scary.
Far down that road. Much farther than I ever wanted us to be.
Forget zombies. Yeah. Margaret Atwood will scare the crap out of you.
Yeah. Okay. So I don't know what else to say about that, except we stand together vigilant. We speak out. We provide care for each other. We try very hard to figure out ways to help the women to help pregnant people in the states where the abortion access is so restricted. This is what we do. We have to organize nationally, not only to fight them in the courts and fight them legislatively, but in the meantime, to help each other out nationally as people are facing these restrictions. And it is, in fact, threatening our lives. Anything else from you?
That's it for me.
I see. Okay.
Kitty cat seems very comfortable and doesn't seem likely to say anything either.
Yes, no, she is merely sitting in a lap quietly. You wouldn't even know she was there, except
her paws are like this.
Kitty cam. All right, kitty cam.
She's like, what the hell are you doing?
Yeah, she's used to it. Okay. So, dear friends, I have John points out The Handmaid's Tale on Hulu is also terrifying. I've seen several episodes of it. It's terrifying. The movie wasn't so good. The book, the most terrifying. Okay. I have to row. And after all of that, welcome to 2024, the year it all gets better. I'm hopeful. I always, I've talked to people about the fact that I am an optimistic person by nature. I do really feel like that we do tend towards justice, though we have really violent abruptions in that process. And we're kind of in one of those right now. And so, we're looking at a whole lot of pushback over gains that people who strive for egalitarianism and for justice have made over the last, 10 years. 15 years, we were going in a really good direction, and now we're seeing a lot of pushback and a lot of overreaction. So, it's that we're in a bad phase. The only thing to do is to keep going. And into 2024, I want to just note that right now we are in a waning moon phase. We are, and this is the time to look at diminishing things, right? So, for those of us that are sort of more ritually inclined, this is a great time to focus on lessening the impact of the ChristoFascists. This is a great time to meditate and focus on the impact, or focus on um, eradicating racism, on eradicating the patriarchy. This is a great time to focus intention on smashing the patriarchy. So, as we work with the moon cycle, um, yeah, I just wanted to throw that out there that the moon is a new moon on the 11th, and that sort of kicks us into gear into the cycle of increase for 2 weeks, right? So, there's that. I just thought I'd point out new moon on the 11th for those of us who are inclined towards moon magic. This is a great time to try to lessen the impact of cruelty and evil. All right, so card wise, we have the Four of Wands inversed, we have the 10 of Cups, and we have the King of Wands. This tells me that we might be starting off feeling a little isolated, feeling a little uh, unstable in community, unstable in family, unstable with others. It's time to reach out and to know that love is there, that in fact the community is strong, and that abundance rules. That's the 10 of Cups. It's a time of, and I say 10 of Cups. I'm sorry. It's the 7 of Cups. It's the time of getting our visions together, in getting our dreams off the ground, in getting our visions of what the world can look like, of how our communities can form and function. And it's a time to try to see clearly, but seeing clearly is not maybe our strongest suit right now. It's really a time for visioning, right? And to see how we can bring together community and to, in fact, take leadership roles. The King of Wands is about, excuse me, using our willpower to direct our action to do what we need to do. It's a creative, joyous sort of inner authority. And it speaks well. All of these cards really speak well for, regardless of if you're feeling insecure or a little isolated now, to reach out, to dream big, and to know that we are being called to be leaders into in our communities, and I would say to be leaders into a better world. That's what I have. Really sort of break through isolation, dream big, know that your community is out there, know that community is caring, know that we, in fact, are a great example of making community together. All you watching, thank you so much for being with us. This is a type of community, the sort of etheric community of the streaming world, or as I almost said, the broadcast world, because Teresa and I, of course, come from radio. This is that time to really bond and to form together. To that end, I hope that we all have a wondrous start here to our new year, that we dream big, that we spend some energy thinking about ways to break the spell of the patriarchy, ways to break the spell of the ChristoFascists, ways to break through and create good community. And know that we all have a very important part to play as we focus our will and lead forward into playful, good action. And that's what I got.
All right, then.
Thank you ever so much for being with us. Thank you so much for being.
Don't forget those alternate news sources. Oh, aljazeera.com, SCMP, that's South China Morning Post, SCMP.com. Let's see.
We'll go ahead and put those in the description for the show.
Okay. Radio Havana, or radiohc.cu.
Yeah, we'll put those in the so
right.
they can even be like links and
All
stuff. It'll be cool.
It's a fine idea. Come here, let go of me.
And
see you later. Hold the ships at sea.
She hates it when you do that. Okay, we love you, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
She purrs.
Yeah.